So it is October the 2nd, is it? The 2nd? So October the 2nd, 2022, and the story of Robotech the Sentinels started in late 2022, allegedly in the Robotech timeline. So this is an update of of the Sentinels. The Robotech story we were going over earlier. So we have Calcat and Mark's cards. It helped to we assembled a ship, SDF-3A spaceship model, built it, and that helped to encourage the story's progression, as well as borrowing from some Trans-Tech stories that we didn't use from the timeline. So yeah. So, are we here? Yeah. I won't give you the names. I'll just give you the names of the people the stories are written from. So there was a Dwayne M story, a Raksha story, a Sheba story, a Phantom story, all of them short stories, and about 5 from T.L. Ahrens that were not used. They were almost used, but weren't used for the Transformers. T.L. Ahrens wrote the original Paper Flowers short story episode, which we included as one of the stories in, I believe, season 3, back in the day. Season 2 of Trans was included in an episode of that. It wasn't the whole episode; it was just included in it. So this is a continuation of that storyline. And in the Transformers version of the storyline, Bush version, the character of Rusty is Dana Sterling. And in this one, too, it's Dana Sterling in this version. So, young Dana Sterling. In her exosuit the entire time. That way we can get around the censors. Get around the censors and say, oh, it's a kid robot. Yeah, that's it. It's a robot. It's not actually a kid, it's a robot. Get away with it. Yeah, because then you can say, well, it's a machine. It's a robot. The Ahrens stories, of course, were the original versions of the short stories were more violent and hyper realistic and twisted. So we did have to change that. Took most of that out, but if we were going to do a Robotech story, that would fit in a Robotech story, because they did that. They kill the characters, they menace them, more so than Transformers. So even though Robotech was a little more serious, still had comedic elements. I flipped through and reviewed Endless Circle and some of the Shadow Children and some of Shared Hallucinations episode. I didn't really go over the Stranded on Macross, because we already kind of did that with Return of the Shadows. It's the same story, just from a different angle. So it kind of was already did that, so I didn't really need to go over that one again. Also, I didn't want to copy the Jack McKinney books, The Sentinels, exactly, and Mark's cards agreed with that. Why copy the books? Do something different. But we do want some of these short stories thrown in there because these particular short stories deal with the conflict between Prime and Megatron in this case, and also dealing with the character of Rusty, who's been changed to Dana, being involved somehow in that thing. The other stories also deal a lot more with the Decepticon side. We've renamed Megatron the Regent, and renamed Prime Zor Prime. So we have a triangle between the Invids and the Regis, which is the triangle that's ran out of Robotech. So kind of we're doing Space Dimension Morgus in a way. Morgus was the 4th series done by the Pseudo That's own company. Back then there were actually 4. Robotech was we're not really doing Orgus, but it seems like the 4th one. And so I think we went over the whole backstory of how that Robotech thing came together many times. But as a refresher, brief refresher, the Robotech was based on a previous 3 discrete and different anime series from the 1980s, 83, 84, that were brought over here by Harmony Gold from Studio New Big West, and brought over here and combined into make Robotech. The 3 stories were completely unrelated. The first was of Super Dimension Fortress Macross, which became Macross, or the first generation Robotech. And it took place on an Earth devastated by giant Zentradi warriors. Yes. Devastated by Earth's Zentradi warriors. Zentradi and Meltrandi. If you think about the story, the Macross, the Do You Remember Love movie, is a clip show, but they just made it look really cool. It's a clip show. It's a condensed version of Robotech. First season before to jump ahead. So now the other shows were thrown in there too, because Macross continued over there. They did a Macross Delta. That was later. They did a Macross Plus, and then they did Macross 7. And Plus and 7. The Plus was a fight between these two pilots. That was basically the plot. They're competing for a new Veritech on planet Eden. In that one. In 7, they're on a generation spaceship of 1 million people going to the edge of the galaxy. They're on the SDF-2, essentially, but they call it the SDF-7. And yes, somebody pointed out on the Robotech thing that, where was the SDF-2? When was that destroyed? Because they kind of fudged it and stuck the SDF-2 in. And so they could say SDF-3 in the lines later on and build up to the Sentinels, which they never actually... They had scripts for 65 episodes of Sentinels. Masek and them just never produced them. They produced a 1-hour pilot. Never went from there. In 1987. The pilot went direct to video, and we got a copy from the Carl Masek booth back then, in 87 convention. And yeah, and we met Carl Masek and Armin Vergama and a bunch of those people. So I did actually meet the two that played Jack McKinney. Two authors played him. And the late Carl Masek, yes. He passed away in 2012, I believe, before Love Alive came out. Yeah, he wouldn't have liked it. No. But yeah, the other stories were Space Cavalry Southern Cross, which takes place on a desolate Mars-like planet. It's supposed to be the Centauri system originally. It's not Tyrol. It's not anything to do with that. I think the Masters are in it, but they've come to Earth, or this planet with 2 moons. That's Mars-like planet. Yeah, and it's set way off in the future, and it's really not connected, which is why it looks completely different. And Mara Marie, I think is her name, becomes Dana Sterling in that one, even though it was someone else entirely. And that. We have the Japanese versions of these two, so we know. The Inbit Invasion was the Inbit Invasion, the space climber Massopieda, stood for, I believe, Massopieda. I believe that is an acronym. What is it? Mecha Energy System Power Energy Armament Droid Armor, or something like that. That's something like that. Massopieda. So, yeah, droid armor. And the Cyclones, too. So, yeah, so... well, we can't really do those. As one of the other... As some of the other Toy Galaxies pointed out, and as well as Spectre Creative, and also more angrily, there was another third-party guy, the other guy, the toy guru guy, the other guy, but I don't know what the name. I'm blanking on his name, but it's one of the other Robotech people on the internet, and he was annoyed about the fact that they never released all the toys, that they screwed up on the action figures a little bit, even though they made them G.I. Joe sized. They didn't really do them justice. They had a play set that was only available to a certain amount of people. They had almost no of Robotech stuff from the other generations. But they released Takatomi and Tatami and Bandai had different rights to different figures, so they're all mixed up. As did later on Exo Squad in the '90s. Also had the rights to some of the figures. We released them. One of my friends, Big Tim Cantrell, had a Timinus, one of our writers from way back, the Starcrackers, had one of the hover tanks. It broke because they break easily, and he decided to burn it and then display it for us to look at later. So yes, but it was broken, so it wasn't like it was. Yeah, it was he burnt it. So that was before the burning of Optimus Prime stories that we did in one of our stories. But inspired by that, we did an Optimus Prime hibachi. That of which is on YouTube, but the other burning we didn't get on. But we saved it from the '90s. So it's kind of a mess, the Robotech thing. So also Rick Hunter and crew, because Massa Pieta, the invasion is not connected. They get home. They're not connected, and so I'll be right back. Back to Robotech. It's back now. Okay, gosh. So basically, we're kind of rehashing other stuff I was looking at over. I finally got around to announce to thus far the teaser for our little Robotech adventure. But also, I've decided that that our version of the Sentinels will be shorter, and that it will be based loosely on the concept of those Disney made-for-Disney miniseries movies, because why not rip off like that concept of like the Mandalorian and the Boba Fett book and all that stuff. We're not ripping off the stories, the concept, the idea of, oh, this is like a miniseries, like for Netflix or something. So our little miniseries will be a series of 3 movies, 3 OVAs, I guess you call them movies. They will all be a sort of a Robotech Sentinel story. There are 3 chief planets. If you boil the whole Sentinels 65 episodes down, the 3 important planets are Tyrol, Hadon, and Optera. And then from there, whatever. So, but because the universe has changed, this is a Trans-Tech sequel to Robotech, so it can do its own thing, completely unconstrained from doing other stuff. And why not? Because we can do our own thing. So it is Robotech, but it's its own thing. It's it's supposed to be 2022, the Robotech timeline, but the Transformers, having arrived in the Robotech universe, had changed the course of the Robotech timeline. They didn't mean to, but they did. The space plague of the pandemic, whatever, that actually affected them. And the Zentradi ended up not invading the Earth, but rather catching the space plague. And they all got sick. So, in the Transformer thing, so they were quarantined here. They didn't attack us, they were just quarantined in orbit. And, that'll be revealed in the story. And somebody will mention it. So the surviving humans in Zentradi, so there was a sort of an Armageddon, but it wasn't the Robotech death bolts or whatever from space. It was a pandemic. So, which is messed up. It's not too soon. Let's do it. They don't reference it that much, but it's in there. So the Tyrol part, the expeditionary force, the pioneer expedition of Rick Hunter and crew to go to Tyrol and meet the Robotech masters on the already captured planet Tyrol, captured by the Invid. Time has accelerated a little bit in that universe. So when they go there, it's not like it's 5 years later or something and everyone's older, although it kind of is. kind of isn't. It does take them a while to get there, so, but it's not. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a time jump or not. Probably not. I think between the three parts of each miniseries, I might say, okay, Tyrol is 2022, and then maybe Hadon is 2030, and then 31, and then Optera is 2040 something. Just to jump ahead. I might do that. I might not. I might say, well, they're all together because they got accelerated because the Transformers met them. Maybe the Transformers met the Invid and the Masters too. So it accelerated them as well. So maybe this is not happening over a course of years, but rather months. So it just, just because this is an interpretation of Robotech based on mainly the middle series, which wasn't tackled so much. This is the Robotech, the movie that they should have made. Instead of the Megazone 23 ripoff they did make. Yeah, I remember we saw that in theaters. Mark's Cards and I saw that in theaters. Megazone 2-3 ripoff. You can see it on YouTube. Somebody's remastered, posted it. But not us. Somebody else. Yeah, we don't own the rights to that, so we wouldn't post that. But so other people have made some very creative Robotech fan films over the years, and ours will be unique because they usually are. I'm not sure why I did Endless Circle with the characters panned so far away from the actual action like that. Characters like there, no close-ups, really? What was I doing? Oh my goodness. Well, yeah. So anyway, that's pretty much all that's thus far. The Aaron's stuff, as I said, was we took out all the violence. There's a little bit. It's PG-13. It's fine. But yeah, the character menacing the main protagonist that much is like, But but the other stories dealt with similar bad guys too. There's that temptress lady, and there's a other thing, and it's clearly supposed to be like a Regis character. I don't know if it is her, but it probably is to make the triangle work. Maybe it's someone else. Maybe there are other ones because a lot of the Invids were females. A lot of the Zentradi were too. They've established that in this other timeline, which might be mentioned later, that Edwards seems to be gone. Zonia and Chiron are also gone because in Shared Hallucinations they were killed. The main chief bad guys in the story shouldn't necessarily be on the expedition just because that's kind of awkward. Why would they do that if they were launching a space expedition to another planet? Let's bring the paranoid schmo guy with us, because that's a good idea. Yeah. Instead, let's make it some angry old G.I. Joe curmudgeon guy. And let's make it Flint. That'd be funnier, because that would work better. Just like, okay, and Marissa Fairborn is Flint's daughter, Lady J. And that never really worked in the original Transformers because they just didn't add the dates up right. They just figured, no one's paying attention. If it went from 1985 to 2005, suddenly, like 20 years later, when was she born? And how old is she? Marissa Fairborn would have been anywhere in age from 18 to 21. If it was 2005, 18 to 20, 21, somewhere in there. She was a stepchild. And she couldn't be a captain. She would have been around, she just wouldn't be a captain. Teenager. Which I did address in the Trans-Tech Space Bridge stories when she shows up. And the Invid Regis is disguised as her in the later Space Bridge stories, which is funny. but in the Trans-Tech, she was just her. Or maybe that was the Regis the whole time. Yeah, maybe she was there even in the early one. But yeah, she shows up in Trans-Tech 3, the miniseries. So anyway, the Dark Catharsis. Anyway, so I don't need to go over that other stuff so much. It's just explain the Robotech stuff, what's going to happen, what's going on, and we're just trying to see where things are going to fit into place for a Robotech story. Hopefully, barring an unforeseen weirdness, production could begin when the scripts are finished. Scripts will probably be finished by Halloween, so they won't be out on Halloween. The scripts will be done by then. And it's possible, maybe likely, that the Tyrol, the first segment, would be out by Christmas. We're going to just say it 2 months ahead. It'd be Christmas, probably. Which would be cool, because then we'd have the Tyrol segment done. Also, maybe some of the other stories. Well, I've already gone over the other stories, and the stuff that was bad I took out. So unlike the other Lexicons where I had to cut stuff out after I printed it, this one I went through and I edited the short stories before I printed them. I said, like, oh, I don't need... there's segments here that just doesn't make sense. This is gone. That's gone. This gone. That's gone. Yeah. So just to make it easier to do, I took out most of the exposition, and which is weird because then you'll have to put in new exposition. But I figured directors of story put in their own exposition anyway. When it comes to setting up scene breaks and whatever, director puts in his own stuff. That's what a lot of fans don't realize, the difference between a script and a story. The fan story, they will often have like a long, this is what the character's thinking and feeling, and he's going on an adventure and a journey, and it's going to spend like 6 pages, getting to the point of him saying it in dialogue later. Which is sort of like your show don't tell. They say show don't tell. And what they mean is they mean don't over narrate the character in your story. Just have them do what they're going to do, and maybe through dialogue. They're kind of telling that way, but what they mean is don't narrate it. Don't have like if in the middle of a Transformers battle, Prime and Megatron are going to fight, and there's suddenly a narrator in the background going, and now Prime and Megatron are going to go over to this hill over here, and they're going to fight each other to the death, and they're going to do this and that. Instead of just Transformers movie opens up, he comes out of the thing, he bashes Decepticons, he goes, one shall stand, one shall fall. All right, there's your hook. You don't need to go from there, that's it. Why throw your life so recklessly? That's a question you should ask yourself, Megatron. Or something like that. Just jump into it. Yeah. Don't tell the reader. Show the reader. Show them what's going to happen. They're going to fight each other. Now, I don't know how we're going to do the dogfights. But I've established that because they really didn't make it. They did make some of the Alpha and Beta fighters later as Masterpiece editions. And having had one, I can safely say that the guy that sold it to me on eBay years ago said, this is a museum piece, don't do anything with it. He glued it back together. So basically when I tried to transform it, he didn't say that he glued it back together, but that's what he meant. Because when I tried to actually transform it, it broke. And that was during the filming of one of the Robotech stories, one of the Shadow Children stories. And it broke. And so we had to write it in that the Veritech was crap. Alpha Fighter was junk. And you'd think like it would be 20 years old at that point. So it'd be kind of weird that they used it at all. It'd make more sense to have them already be there and like be a later design. It seemed like the hover tanks were a trick back. It is funny though that the hover tanks, when you transformed them as a toy, Matchbox made the toys. And only those and the Bioride Fighter and the other one. And there was a kid, there was a guy. He broke his during the expo. I don't know the guy, but he broke it. It's famous. It's on YouTube. The guy, they blotted out his face in some of the showings of it. Some of them you can see who it is. I still don't know who it is, but the guy's like, oh no! Broke it in half because it would swivel around and his butt would shoot out and then the gun would go coming kind of out of its butt, like a tail. Weird. Not a very good design. Never properly did it. Although, as a I built cardboard robots back in the day when I was a teenager, and I saw that guy and I said, I could redesign this so it works better. So I made a Megatron that did that. So I had this Power Master Megatron that was purple. And I made him a hover tank. Because I couldn't put tread wheels on him, so he was a hover tank. And he looked he had the Megatron chest plate boobs, and he had the Megatron cod piece, the cannon going like this. But he was a hover tank, and he would transform and fold over. Instead of having him fold this way, I had him sort of his legs come up to meet his chest instead, the other way, so that he'd be kind of doing like a squats, like guardian mode, which made a little more sense. It's like, why would he twist around and aim his butt the other way and have him backwards? No, put him forward. The Hiss Tank Megatron tried to do that too, and it didn't work. It doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good. There is a good one though. There is Generations Megatron. Would make a good hover tank. Generations, the tall Megatron with is basically similar to that design that I had. Enough that you say, oh, all right. Except for the rubber treads, you have to be careful. They break down over time. It kind of sucks, but yeah. But yeah, it was about the toys and stuff. A lot of the toys. There was another site called TG Omega going on about, because he's the plastic addict on TG Omega. He's the plastic addict on eBay. He goes on about the other stuff. And he was mentioning the somebody back in the day, 20 years ago, was on there buying up all the jet fighters and all the jet fighters. If there was a Jetfire eBay thing, this person was buying it up. And he's also buying a lot of Star Trek figures and a lot of the Star Trek figure lots. He'd buy those up and Jetfires. And there was other ones that he got, but those are jealous. And this guy named Transcard. I had no idea what this Transcard. Buying up all the Jetfires, and then put them out there. So I went on his channel and I said, "Yeah, I had an eBay store back in the day. I was a guy that's buying up all those Jetfires. And I had 41 of them. I rebuilt them. I rebuilt 22 of them to actually be functional again, and I painted some of them. I figured, why not paint them? Because they're still yellow and gross. I painted them. Some fans complained on the YouTube said, "How did you paint the Jetfires?" Now the ones that I painted over were so yellowed plastic really badly that you can't transform them really. If you did, they would go. Psh. Yeah, they weren't good quality Jetfires. They were like, back then, $20 was a lot. $25 was a lot for a Jetfire. You get a Jetfire. And the early print ones have the little Robotech symbol still on them. 84 ones, 85 ones don't. And they all had the same design flaw. To swap the 84, 85 ones because the earlier ones would have a bad backpack, and the later ones would have a bad shoulder. So yeah, because they had the bad shoulder because the later ones had the bad shoulder because they would jury rig the wings, take them off, and put them back on, and something with the plastic broke every time they did that. So they messed up the design. So yeah, so 40 existing Robotechs jet transfer. A lot of interesting ones. I made my own version of the Super Ostrich from Do You Remember Love because I couldn't get one. And somebody from the church years ago had gotten one. It was very similar the same day. I wanted to get one, but I was younger and I couldn't afford it. Anyway, so, but yeah, he offered me, but I couldn't afford it even then. So. Yeah, it was yellowed after all these years, but I didn't get it. I had to make my own. Then I showed him it. I said, "Here's my version of." And what's funny is those old Veritechs are actually still in good enough condition that they can be filmed. And those the one masterpiece Veritech that I had broke immediately upon trying to transform it, and that didn't work. My old Legios Robo, the Korean Legios Robo, the Takara Tomy one. I have two of those, blue ones. And actually that toy, even though it is delicate, is not as delicate as the masterpiece ones were. But just around. I did eventually get a reissue 20th anniversary, smaller scale, 1 in 60 scale, Super Ostrich. Yeah, I do have one. It's a small one. It's a little desktop one. one of the jets immediately broke and flew off, and it took until it got lost until it took until remodeling the room years ago, the main studio, that I found it wedged under the dresser and and rescued the piece. But yeah, it's still in a box, sealed, and never played with it because it was really delicate. But the one piece flew off. But it's a really cool super ostrich. They also have the Island Seeker. I made an Island Seeker too. Cat's eye from the thing too. I didn't build the cat's eye probe on the top though, so it's just gray, silver gray. So it's technically Island Seeker, sort of, but it's got. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, I was rambling on about Robotech, but yeah. So trying to make new ones. I'm going to end this here before I start rambling about stuff that isn't Robotech. But yeah, I'm gonna have to find a way to get. Cause they didn't make I have the Invid Officer pod thing from. It was from the later series. It was from Exo Squad. I got one of those. I got some Invids from Exo Squad, but I didn't ever have the originals back in the day. Exo Squad ones. And they didn't make very many of the other ones. They didn't make a Sierra and a Korg. But there was a kid back in high school, back in the day, who claimed that he had the actual Robotech Masters shuttle pod thing for the transport. They never made them, so he was lying. They never made, even in Japan, they never made the Bioroid shuttle. They didn't do that. If he meant the Bioroid fighter little hover disc thing, they did make that, but it was never available here. You could put the little fighter guy on. You could pretend to ride this hovercraft. But that wasn't what he was talking about. He said it was a shuttle. No, they didn't make a shuttle. The SDF-1, they made that. They made the ship. I have the ship. I rebuilt it. My father and I rebuilt it back in the day. He helped with the engineering of it. The toy. Putting it back together. It has since fallen on hard times and is in 4 different pieces, but it's in a box, so. But it's still around. It's just a mess. I can glue it back together with super glue, I suppose. Probably will. But it's a mess. My SDF-3 was from the movies. It's still the original one. It's about 18 inches roughly. That one. That one is. It was damaged in the move, but it is. I was able to repair it with glue. It was wood, and although the arm is not reattached, that part is off. So there's this arm that's not reattached, but the rest of it's fine. Oh. Huh. So I was like, why don't I rebuild the SDF-3 for this new series before I do anything with the series at all? Visualize what it would look like as an actual full-on studio model. Started out with an 18-inch scale that sort of grew a little bit. I think it's around 22, 24 inches, and it probably weighs like 16 pounds. It's kind of heavy. It's got a lot of weight to it. The new one, the Robotech channel. Show off the ship later on. Yes, and the Titan Knave, the Ryan Church model, is not us. That was Ryan Church. It just looks a lot like the one we did. Yeah. And the SDF-3 model, then, therefore, Ergo looks like some of the stuff the McKinney guys did years ago. The SDF-3, this new model, is inspired by some of that other stuff. So it looks cool. Also the bioship. Not a carrier. So I would build my own out of cardboard. Also wood, and then other forms later on. So yeah. And yeah, I've built balsa carriers over the years. Well, I finally built that. If you count the SDF ships as the carrier, there it is. Sure.